Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. So if you're new here, my name is Atousa. I'm a woman chess grandmaster, and today I want to show you a very exciting game. This game is interesting because, as you know, some of you might know that I played in the US Championship, Women US Championship recently, and I basically got qualified to play in this tournament. And in this tournament there were also like men who were competing in the US Championship, so the playing hall was the same, and this game basically caught my eyes. So this is a game between Fabiano Caruana, who's the four-time US champion and world number 2 in ranking list, against Mishra, who is a very talented junior. He is only 14 years old and he passed 2600, so he is really great. And this game was really great as well. It was fantastic. Okay, I don't want to talk too much. Let's go and see the game, see what happened in the game. Could Mishra make basically some difficulties for Fabiano, who's a more experienced player, or not? Okay, so Mishra is playing as black, as you can see. Fabiano is playing as white. The game started with e4, c5, so we have Sicilian defense here. Knight f3, d6, bishop b5, check. Okay, bishop b5 is not the main line. The main line here is d4, but bishop b5 is completely playable as well. So black played bishop d7, and Fabi here played c4, which is an interesting move. Knight f6, knight c3, g6. Mishra wanted to fianchetto the bishop. White took the bishop, queen takes d7, and castle. As you know, in the opening, we need to get our pieces out, we need to castle, and so on. So black played bishop g7 here, white played d4, c takes d4, queen takes d4, knight c6. Notice that even though the queen is in front of the bishop, but there is no good discovery attack in this position. So black played knight c6, white played queen d3, castle, bishop d2, and here the idea is to connect the rooks. And I think I was actually watching the commentary, and Fabi said that he remembered a game where it was the same kind of position, but the queen was on e2, but he kind of misplayed the opening. But anyway, let's see what happened after. So black played a6, white played rook a b1, black played knight g4. Okay, what is the idea here? The idea is to play knight e5 to attack the queen and exchange the knights. So white moved the queen back, rook fc8, knight d5, queen d8. Why queen d8 is a great move? Because after knight d5, white wants to fork. White wants to play knight b6 and attack 3 pieces at the same time. So black played queen d8, white played bishop c3 to exchange the good bishop of black. So black took the bishop, which was not a great move. A better move here is to attack the knight on d5, and the knight doesn't have a good square. So if white takes, then black can take, and after knight c3, here black can play knight e5. And even though the pawn on d6 is a little bit vulnerable because the pawn has moved to e6, so the pawn on e7 is no longer protecting the pawn, but here black is totally fine. Why? Because black got some space, and now the pawn on c4 is also an issue. So for example, let's say if white takes, the pawn on c4 is under attack because we're attacking with 2 pieces and there is just one queen defending it. And if white wants to play b3, then black can play b5, and notice that white cannot capture the pawn because the knight is hanging, right? Okay, so let's go back. So Mishra here took the bishop, which was not the best choice. So Fabi played b takes c3, which is an interesting move. The idea is to open up the rook, and now the pawn on b7 is in danger. So a lot of chess players would probably take back with the knight, which is not a good decision here. So b takes c3 was really nice move, which I really liked. So rook a b8, Fabi played c5, another interesting move. So basically, white wants to open up the d file. So if black takes here, white wants to play knight b6 first to attack the rook. And if the rook moves, then white can play rook fd1. And here, even though white is down a pawn, but white has initiative here, and white's position is much better. So that's why after c5, Mishra didn't take on c5. He instead moved the knight to e5, which was not a great move. A better move here probably was knight f6, but okay, it's really hard to play such moves, and for computer, you know, for computers it's probably easy, right? But for human it's kind of impossible to find such moves, because basically even after knight f6, okay, you make double pawns for yourself. But I mean, it's a difficult position actually for black, so I don't know what can black do in practical games. But anyway, he played knight e5, which is a logical move. Knight takes e5, knight takes e5, and Fabi played f4, so white needs to get more space. f4 attacks the knight moved back to d7, and then c takes d6, e takes d6, and then f5. Very nice move. So white is trying to open up the position, to open up the rook. Queen g5, rook f4, knight e5. Knight e5 was not a great move, but again, it's difficult to play here. Computer suggests this move king h8, which is not an easy move again. It's one of those computer moves again. So knight e5 was played, rook f1. In this position, black played rook c5, white played queen e3, rook f8, queen h3, and here black sacrificed his rook for the knight, because as you can see, the knight on d5 is so powerful. So Mishra decided to sacrifice this rook in order to basically get some counter attack. So he took here, pawn took, and then he played rook e8. Fabi took on g6, which is the right decision. F takes g6, queen e3, and then queen d8. So h3, king g7, and then queen d4. So at this point, white is much better, but it's a matter of technique, because yeah, computer says it's +4, but it's not that easy to win such positions, especially with the knight on e5, which is, you know, controlling the whole board, and the knight is protected by another pawn. So it's not that easy, but let's see if Fabi could win the game or not. So Mishra played rook e7 here, rook f6, rook d7, queen f4, getting the, what do you call it? Is it Alekhine's gone? Someone maybe can write me in comment section. Is this Alekhine's gone when you put all of your like major pieces on the same file? Probably. Okay, so black played rook c7, queen b4. Queen b4 was not a great move, because after knight c4, this queen is kind of, you know, out of the game. Like, it's not, the queen is not in the center. So knight c4 is a nice move. Now the problem here is that if this queen wants to get back to the game by queen b3 or queen b1, then black has this nice fork, and the knight is blocking the queen from the king side. So here white played rook 6 f2, black played queen g5, queen a4, queen e3 to pin the rook, queen d1, queen takes c3, rook f3. Okay, rook c2 probably was a better move to pin the knight as well, but rook f3 is also okay. Queen d2, queen a1 check, knight e5, rook d1, queen c2. Okay, at this point, as you can see, players didn't have that much time, so Fabi had just 1 minute and his opponent had just few seconds left on the clock, but they're going to get their 30 minutes on the next move, basically, after next move. So rook f2, queen e4, so this is 40th move, and here players get an extra 30 minutes according to the regulations. So white played a4, h5, a5 to block these two pawns. Now if black pushes the pawn, we can do en passant. And here black played queen e3, queen b2, g5, queen b6, trying to exchange the queens because the rook is also hanging. Black exchanged the queens, pawn took, rook c5, rook f5, putting pressure on the pawn. Black played king g6, rook f1, rook takes d5, rook f8. White is going for this pawn on b7, g4. Here, if black wants to play rook b5 to attack the pawn, here the problem is that white can play rook f6, and if the king moves, then white can take the pawn, and he's also protecting the pawn on b6. So that's why black played g4, white checked, king h7, and then he moved the rook to b8. So rook b5, rook takes b7, and now the pawn on b7 is really dangerous for black. King g6, h takes g4, h takes g4, rook b8, king g7, king h2, rook b3 to cut off the king, rook c1, king f6. Notice that if, for example, there are some chances to get a checkmate. So for example, let's say if black moves here and something like this, black can checkmate, right? The rook blocks and we can take. Okay, white needs to play really bad moves, but this can be an idea for black. So white play rook c1 here, king f6, rook c7, knight g6. Notice that if black pushes the pawn, now the best move here is to play king h3, of course, not king g1 or king h1, because then black can checkmate white. So after rook c7, black played knight g6, b7, g3, king h3, very good move, or better to say, it's the only move. And knight f4 check, king g4, knight e6, attacking the rook, rook d7 to protect the rook and also to attack the pawn on d6, knight c5, rook takes d6, king e5, rook c6, knight d7, rook e8 check, king d5, rook takes a6, rook takes b7, king takes g3, check, king h4, rook b2, sorry, actually knight c5 first, to attack the rook, rook a5, king d6, g4, king d7, rook e1. Notice that the rook is cutting off the king, so white is trying to promote his pawn, and the king cannot help because the king is, you know, being cut off by the rook. So black played knight b7, rook a7, king c6, g5, king b6. And here I want you to pause the video and try to find the best move for white. What should white do in this position? So here Fabi sacrificed the rook. Why? Because the pawn is close to being a queen very soon, and the pawn can turn into a queen like in 3 moves. So you just push the pawn, 2 more moves. He can't move here, he can't move here, so he played king c6 to open up the rook, but white can push the pawn again, and after rook b8, white played king h5, and this pawn will get promoted later on, and black has to sacrifice the rook, and then with 1 rook, white can checkmate the king. So here Mishra just resigned, and Fabi won the game. And this was the penultimate round, but Fabiano Caruana won the tournament before even playing the last round. So huge congratulations to him. He played a very good, games in this tournament, and definitely he had some difficulties throughout the tournament as well, but he managed to basically win his games. And yeah, so he won the US championship for the 4th time, which is very nice. And because I played, for the first time, and I know how difficult it is to win the US championship, it's really about getting ready. It's not only about technical issues, it's also like mental, and like it's a lot of like nerve-wracking moments for you, and you need to just be prepared mentally that it's a very tough tournament. I experienced it, so now I know it really well. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this game, and if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet. And I'll see you very soon in the next video, and until then, take care, and I'll see you soon. Bye.